Kamusta na mga ka-addict? This is a complete guide on how to install a dual crown fork on your Fiido Q1s, a perfect upgrade or replacement for the stock front suspension fork. This is a dual crown inverted fork. It's an air-type suspension fork suitable for 12-inch wheel size, like the one on the Fiido Q1s. This is the air valve. It's where you will inject air into the fork chamber. You will need this type of air pump for shock absorbers or suspension forks. On the other side is the compression mode adjuster knob. It's where you can adjust the compression speed of your suspension fork. I started removing the accessories from the handlebar, the handle grip, the handlebar switch, brake lever, key ignition switch, and the 3-speed switch. I also removed the LED headlight from the head tube. And of course, the front wheel has to be removed as well. I continued removing the handlebar. I loosened the stem riser, then pulled it off from the steer tube. These are the parts of the stock headset which I will not use anymore. I provided a new headset. It's a 44mm headset, perfect for the Fiido frame head tube. This is a threadless type of headset. The bearing top cover has rubber along the inner circle that seals the bearing headset and keeps away dust and water. This is the compression ring. The compression ring interfaces with the upper bearing and steerer tube, which helps keep the steerer tube centered in the head tube. Next is the sealed bearing. Take note, most sealed bearings come pre-greased from the factory. And this is the bearing cup. Lastly is the crown race. The crown race is designed to hold the bearing in place. It also helps to ensure the bearing is properly aligned. I proceeded installing the bearing cups on the head tube. Make sure the bearing cups are properly installed. Check if the bearing cups are completely aligned or evenly installed on the head tube. I removed the upper crown from the suspension fork. And I put the crown race onto the steerer tube. As you can see, the crown race is evenly resting on the lower crown of the fork. Next was the bearings. Put the bearings into the bearing cups. Take note, this side of the bearing that has slope should be facing the bearing cup. Ensure the bearings are evenly resting into the bearing cups. I placed the scooter directly on the floor. I carefully inserted the steerer tube into the head tube. While the scooter is on the floor, this will help to maintain the suspension fork in place while inserted into the head tube. Time to put the compression ring onto the steerer tube. The compression ring has to be inserted well between the steerer tube and the bearing. The compression ring will maintain the steerer tube in the center of the head tube. And lastly, put the bearing top cover onto the steerer tube. Remember that this has rubber installed along the inner circle. This type of top cover is threadless. It's a friction fit due to the rubber installed. You will find it little bit difficult to slide onto the steerer tube. Push it all the way down as this will secure in place the compression ring. I proceeded installing the upper crown of the suspension fork. To make it easy when installing the upper crown, loosen the bolts from the lower crown. This will give you control when inserting back the two arms into the upper crown. Once the two arms are back into the upper crown, align properly and check if the upper crown is resting perfectly directly on the bearing top cover. The upper crown will support and lock the bearing top cover. The upper crown will securely hold the whole headset, ensuring the bearing top cover is fixed in place to avoid the steerer tube from wobbling. After aligning the upper crown, proceed tightening the bolts that lock up the two arms. Check the steerer tube carefully if there is any sign of wobbles. If there is no sign of wobbles, proceed tightening the 4 bolts in the lower crown to lock up the two arms. Make sure the steerer tube is not wobbling. To finalize the installation, tighten the bolt in the upper crown that locks up the steerer tube. Remember that the upper crown will lock the whole bearing headset in place to hold the steerer tube in the center of the head tube without wobbles. These are the stem spacers, 28.6mm in diameter and 20mm in length. I wanted to raise my handlebar securely, that is why I added spacers. After piling the spacers, I put the bike stem. I also provided a top cover expander plug to achieve a secure and stable fit. It expands the moment you turn the bolt clockwise. It jams or squeezes tightly inside the steerer tube, causing to lock firmly. As you can see, there's a gap or space. What I did, I added one more spacer. It's a 5mm length spacer. The top cover expander plug sits perfectly after I added the spacer. Then I proceeded installing the handlebar on the bike stem. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to support my channel by liking, commenting, and sharing all my videos. At syempre, maraming salamat. Muli kayong naligaw sa channel ko. Ride safe lang palagi mga ka-addict.